Have you ever noticed that there's a strange difference between knowing exactly what to do and simply not doing it? Because it's not a lack of information. You know which habit would change your routine. You know which decision would change your life. You know which conversation you need to have. And still you delay. It's not distraction. It's not laziness. It's almost as if the moment you're about to act, something pulls you back. And the strangest part is that you keep planning, keep thinking, keep saying, I'll start tomorrow. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. If you know what you need to do, why do you keep choosing to wait? What actually happens inside you in the seconds before you decide to delay again? If this has ever happened to you, I need to tell you something before any explanation. You're not alone in this. There's a very specific type of person who lives this exact pattern. People who think deeply, who reflect before acting, who don't do things impulsively. People who plan better than most, who understand their own potential, who can clearly see where they could be a year from now, but seem to freeze right at the first step. And then the cycle begins. You promise you'll change, feel a surge of motivation, organize everything in your head, and the next day, something inside you says, not now. And you feel guilty. Because it's not a lack of ability. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's as if your mind is always active, but your life doesn't move at the same speed. And that starts to eat at you from the inside, because you know you could be somewhere else. Now let me ease something that might be weighing on you. This doesn't mean you're weak. It also doesn't mean you're lazy. In fact, many times it's the opposite. People who live this pattern usually care too much, think too much, analyze too much. You don't start things carelessly. You want certainty. You want to feel prepared. You want to avoid unnecessary mistakes. And let me give you a simple scene. Think about that important message you needed to send. You opened the app, typed half of it, read it again, imagined how the other person might respond, deleted it, closed it, told yourself you'd send it later. That wasn't incompetence. That was protection. While you try to protect yourself from possible discomfort, you delay the possibility of growth. And what's most curious is that from the outside, no one notices. People see someone intelligent, aware, even disciplined in other areas. But inside, there's this constant tension between, I know I can, and why don't I do it? Maybe it's time to look at that with less judgment and more curiosity. Now think with me like we're having a real conversation. Imagine you come to me and say, I think I delay because I don't have enough discipline. And I'd ask you, really? Because look at what happens. When something is urgent, you do it. When someone depends on you, you deliver. When pressure shows up, you act.
So it's not an inability to act. What changes isn't your skill. It's the emotional risk involved. When the change is big, when the decision could alter your identity, when there's a real chance you might grow, the brain interprets that as a threat. Not a physical threat, but a threat of exposure, judgment, visible failure. And then it does what it does best. It protects you. How? By creating smart justifications. It's not the right time. I need to prepare more. I'll start next week. It sounds logical, but deep down, it's protection disguised as planning. And this is where the conflict gets deeper. Because at the same time you want to change, there's a part of you that's afraid of what comes after the change. Have you thought about that? Because changing isn't just about improving your life. Changing means no longer being who you've been until now. It means leaving behind the version that's already familiar, even if it's unsatisfied. And the unknown, no matter how promising, is still unknown. You live this silent paradox. You suffer for not acting, but you also feel a certain comfort staying where you are. It's not a happy comfort. It's predictable. And predictability calms the brain. Now, let me be honest with you for a second. If you keep waiting until you feel completely ready, you could spend years in the same place. Not because you're incapable, but because the brain will always find a sophisticated argument to keep you safe. And meanwhile, that feeling of falling behind grows. And that hurts, because it starts to feel like a character flaw, like maybe you're just not the kind of person who follows through. But that narrative wasn't born from truth. It was born from repetition. But here's the part almost no one tells you. When you delay, you're not just avoiding a task, you're avoiding a possible impact on how you see yourself. Every action that truly matters carries an invisible risk, the risk of shaking your identity. Because while something is only in your head, it's perfect, it's potential, it's promise. And promise can't be judged. Only execution can. This pattern has a name. I like to call it the potential self-trap. As long as you live in "I could," you feel safe, because no one can measure what you haven't done yet. But the moment you begin, it stops being an idea and becomes reality, and reality can confirm or challenge the image you built about yourself. Now, I'm going to simplify this in a brutally honest way. As long as you're trying to preserve the image of who you think you are, you will delay anything that threatens that image. If you see yourself as intelligent, starting something new puts that intelligence to the test. If you see yourself as someone full of potential, acting might reveal limits, and limits hurt, because they break the comfortable fantasy you created about who you are. They show where you still don't know, where you still need to learn, where you're not as strong as you imagined.
So the brain does what it knows best. It protects you from anticipated pain. It keeps you in the safe territory of intention. And that's why this isn't just about discipline. It's about identity. Because discipline changes routines, but identity determines how far you allow yourself to go. Now, let me turn the mirror toward you, without judgment. Just observe. How many times have you said you'd start for real next Monday? How many times have you felt that late-night clarity as if everything finally made sense? And the next morning, you woke up different, colder, more distant from that decision. And maybe you have a theory about it. Maybe you think, that's just how I am. I get excited fast and then lose interest. But what if it's not disinterest? What if it's protection? Because every time you start something that truly matters, you shake the structure of your identity. You leave the territory of "I could" and enter the territory of "now it's real." And when it becomes real, there's no more fantasy, no more idealization, just execution, just exposure. So answer me like we're actually talking. Are you delaying because you don't want it, or because you want it so much that the risk of failing feels too big? So maybe the question was never, why am I like this? Maybe it's, what am I trying to protect when I choose to wait a little longer? Because delaying isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's miscalibrated self-protection. But too much protection becomes a prison. And I know you might be thinking right now, okay, but what do I do with this? If you were sitting in front of me asking that, I wouldn't tell you to change your whole life tomorrow. I'd tell you to pay attention to the exact second before the excuse appears, before the "not now," before the "next week." Because that's where the pattern lives. And once you start seeing the pattern, it starts losing its grip. If any part of this made you recognize yourself, write in the comments which sentence hit you the hardest. You don't need to explain everything, just mark the point. Sometimes putting it into words already breaks half the cycle. And if you know someone who keeps saying they'll start soon, send this video to them. Maybe they just need to realize it's not laziness. You're not stuck. You just became an expert at protecting yourself.